I would like to thank you all for helping this channel break through the 500 subscriber milestone. A special thanks, I would like to do something that I have been wanting to for a good while now. I would like to share with you my top 10 favourite games of all time. I thought it would be fun. It certainly is fun to watch other people's top 10s, and I thought it would be easy. I could talk about my favourite games all day, but I hit an unexpected barrier. I did not anticipate just how difficult it would be to actually list all of the games that have had an impact on me. I feared that my favouritism towards a certain blue hedgehog would skew the results. So I did myself a favour and made a rule not to include multiple games from the same series to prevent my list from looking like this. With that rule set in place, I had one more concern, that even if I could think of 10 unique games, how am I ever going to order them from 1 to 10? So I went for walks, and lots of walks. I vibed with some music, cleared my head, and went on a journey through time and space. I thought of all my fondest gaming memories, the games that I go out my way to replay time and time again, the games I want to share with my friends, the games that inspire me or have left an impact on me so strong they've become a part of who I am. I'm glad I added these other categories to the list, as they were a massive help in determining the final order. Picking number 1 and 2 were no-brainers, as was removing games that were without a doubt non-contenders for a top 10 placement. I had to think long and hard about 3, 4, 5 and 6, but then the rest easily fell into an order I felt content with. So without further ado, let's tick off another YouTuber cliché as I present to you my top 10 favourite video games of all time. Number 10. Close Your Eyes. Now think of a game you remember being super hyped for. Have you ever been so hyped for a game after watching a trailer that you've dreamt of being in it before release? Now open your eyes. After the explosion of information revealed during E3 2016, this is exactly how I felt going into The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Now I want to be honest with you, I am not a traditional Zelda scholar. I don't know the difference between a phantom hourglass and a train crash. I've always recognised that Zelda games are special to a lot of gamers, however, after giving a few a shot, I just find them not to be to my tastes. I hope I don't upset any Zelda fans when I say that every 3D Zelda that I've previously tried feels kinda janky, restricted, boring. But Breath of the Wild promised to be different. Not only did it promise survival and experimentation in a land taken back by nature, but it promised to be a truly open world in which you could complete any of the objectives in any order you wish. I was sold on the game after that trailer. The visuals and shots on display in combination with that music had an effect on me so profound that I started to dream of being in Hyrule before the game had even came out. And as soon as it arrived on my Nintendo Switch, a release which I was equally hyped for, I was in love with my first open world game. I'll never forget my first few deaths. With death in this game comes knowledge, and little did I know at the time, but this screen here would help me prepare for another game in this list. More on that later. It forces you to learn the game's rules, encourages you to take a step back and try another approach, or straight up tell you that you're not ready for this bit yet. The game is geniusly designed so you stay in a loop of exploration, gathering resources and combat, and I think it is very satisfying. Breath of the Wild, at least to me, feels like a fully fleshed out version of another game that sadly didn't make the list. 2013's Tomb Raider reboot was what I'd consider to be my first true HD AAA video game. Its first hour wowed me and showed great potential for an open survival game requiring you to hunt for food and stay warm early on. These elements sadly get dropped before the game decides that it wants to be a set-piece driven action spectacle instead. Now, I still enjoyed the final version of Tomb Raider. I loved the tombs, as few as there were. I enjoyed the combat, especially once you had more options at your disposal. But the most fun thing about Tomb Raider was the bow. I'm not sure what it is, but gathering, stealth, bows and headshots is a type of gameplay I enjoy very much. Can you see where I'm going with this? Breath of the Wild is like the concept of 2013 Tomb Raider fully brought to life. The main draw of Breath of the Wild will always be this gameplay loop. I guess I really like survival games. I love how the game will show you something curious within viewing distance and the way you are rewarded for your curiosity. I love hoarding lots of items, weapons, shields and ammo. I love making a huge batch of meals to prepare for the next scout. I love finding a new enemy base, taking them out one by one, or sometimes at once, and then reaping the rewards once the coast is clear. I love being low on equipment and being forced to think outside the box in order to restock. Weapon breaking keeps you on your toes and the game would be boring without it. One of my favourite parts of the game is when you land on Eventide Island and the game decides to strip you of all your hard-earned gear and puts you back to square one, forcing you to take everything you've learnt so far and put your skills to the test. Unfortunately, I found many of the game's bosses to be too easy, especially the final boss. I was also left with a feeling of disappointment after the credits rolled and upon reloading my save file, discovering that nothing in the world had changed. This is why when I replay the game, I don't care much for finishing it. I just load it up so I can vibe in its beauty. It has become my ultimate chill out game, so much so that when I used to get really bad insomnia, I would load up one of those relaxing sounds and music with rain videos to help me sleep. I love this game's vibrant beauty, its peaceful soundtrack and ambient audio design, beautifully realising a fantasy of being a survivor in a world overtaken by time and nature. Luckily, you have all the time in the world to rescue the princess, so why not spend some of it in Hyrule? Here you can buy your own home and fill it with all kinds of pretty things. Build a community by uniting all of the kingdom's sons in Tarrytown. Befriend and adopt horses. Sorry, no undead horses allowed. Shield surf, paraglide, climb, control metal, stop time, ride a frickin' bike. I love this game so much. I have even went back to try it on my Wii U and must say it's impressive that this game runs so well on what is essentially an Apple II. But it's not perfect. The story doesn't really do much for me and doesn't make me want to extensively check out Zelda lore in ways that other games on this list have. I'm not a fan of having a hardy difficulty locked behind paid DLC, nor am I a fan of having the wolf companion feature be locked behind a rare and expensive amiibo. Also, saving the master cycle for the very end seems like an odd choice considering you probably have seen most of the world at that point, which is why I decided to experience an emulated and modded playthrough of the Wii U version via Cemu back in 2020. I was able to experience the game at 60 FPS and full 1080p with additional graphical enhancements. With mods, I could summon the bike for my main adventure and turn my Breath of the Wild experience into an epic crossover event with an amazing Metroid themed mod. I turned Liz Phalos into Charizards, ported over weapon and armor skins from other series, and it'll never get old seeing Shrek or Ugandan Knuckles show up in a game. I think it's responsible for halving my old PC's lifespan, but I'm glad I experienced the game that way. While I don't really feel the need to boot it up much these days, I will never forget my time with Breath of the Wild, and it continues to inspire me to this day. And other game developers too. I kinda resent that other series have since wanted a slice of that pie, but it's not Breath of the Wild's fault, I suppose. I hope I get to enjoy the sequel, but I don't see it having quite the same impact on me. We'll see. This is why The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild takes my number 10 spot. Number 9. The Wii U is a console that is very special to me. It was the first ever console I bought at launch, and while I didn't have much to play on it during its first year, I was quite content on playing All-Stars Race and Transformed multiplayer on separate screens, playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2 with a Wii remote and nunchuck, Monster Hunter cross-platform co-op with my friend on 3DS, and my backlog of favourite Wii games via backwards compatibility. But there was one game I didn't pick up until closer to the console's 1 year anniversary, and now I can't think of the Wii U without it. Zombie U is a Wii U launch game by Ubisoft Montpellier. It was heavily marketed and even had its own console bundle at launch. I remember the hype. I remember when it was called Killer Freaks from Outer Space, an arcadey experience more akin to Call of Duty Zombies with Raven Rabbits, and I remember Shigeru Miyamoto giving it a thumbs up during E3 2011. And I remember when it was re-revealed in 2012 as Zombie U, a completely different game in tone and pace. The developers must have had a stroke of genius midway through development and found fun in managing stressful situations with the gamepad, and decided to turn the game into a survival horror. I never felt compelled to play survival horrors, but it wasn't until I tried a guided demo at one of those Nintendo events they sometimes do in shopping malls that I became interested. They had me play through the beginning of the nursery segment until I, of course, died. I was anxious, out in public, unable to focus. I couldn't swing my cricket bat for the life of me. I left thinking, nah, this ain't for me. Yet I got it anyway. Was it a lack of other compelling Wii U games to play until 3D World came out? Was it because of following and reading the game on Miiverse? Was it the fact that despite my bad first impression, the demo still managed to satisfy an itch buried deep within me? Does this sound familiar to you at all? Have you ever asked a friend in conversation, or been asked by somebody, what's your zombie apocalypse plan? I don't know if it's just part of British culture or something, but it comes up in topic a lot. Could it be that modern life has become so stressful that we all secretly have fantasies of the zombie apocalypse? I was always one of those people who would not only give you an answer, but also ask you back while I listen and decide in my head if I would let you join me or leave you behind with the horde. When I played Zombie U for the first time, it allowed me to put my money where my mouth was, only for me to discover that I would probably die very quickly in a real-life scenario. Zombie U grounds you in a gritty, post-apocalyptic version of London with nothing but a cricket bat, a bagpack, and your prepper pad, all supplied to you by a mysterious man who watches you via CCTV and refers to himself as the Prepper. In exchange for completing objectives, he'll let you reside in his safe house, a place where you can hoard supplies, check on CCTV, upgrade weapons, and heal and save, in complete safety, or so you'd think. From here you expand the map gradually by venturing out with your gear, with guidance from your watcher. His prepper pad is the ultimate tool that immerses you in this world. As the game was built for the Wii U gamepad in mind, movement is clunky. You also cannot jump for some reason. Must be heavy carrying all this stuff. The game controls as if you were carrying both the Wii U gamepad and your weapon, and there really is nothing quite like it. The prepper pad acts as both your map and your flashlight, which you'll constantly need to manage while navigating. This is why the ports to PS4 and Xbox One simply don't feel the same. And at any time during gameplay you can stop, whip out the prepper pad and use it to scan everything in your area or manage your backpack inventory, all displayed on your gamepad screen, while the TV changes to a third-person view. The game also shifts to this view when you are using a scoped weapon. You must glance back at the TV every now and then to check if any zombies are creeping up on you. This is pretty genius, like it's a perfect simulation of having your attention diverted, and it will train you to make sure that any room is truly safe before you stop to do so. You will also learn to efficiently manage your space so you can easily access an item during an emergency, as the gamepad gives you a limited number of quick access slots which you'll need to refill manually after use. Your main weapon you'll be using is the cricket bat, which can shove enemies away with a push, buying you some breathing room, or you can give it a good, weighty swing. This attack requires steady timing and patience. The stress rises with each swing as the camera becomes more and more unstable and your character starts to yell louder and louder. Really adds to the tension. Once you've done enough damage, you can finish them by holding the attack button. I like how these zombies can take a while to go down. They're not just walking targets. And since ammo is scarce and the sound of using it might awaken more zombies, you don't always want to be using the numerous weapons you'll find scattered across the map. Instead, the game encourages you to use other solutions, such as distracting the blighters with flares. A good example early on is when the game gives you a choice on the way to the supermarkets. Either crawl under the gap and be greeted by a bunch of zombies, or climb the ladders, throw a flare near this explosive barrel and kill them all in one go. The game does a good job at keeping you cautious and scared, especially when going in blind. Until you scan CCTV boxes, your map will be completely blank, and when your radar pings you'll have to ask yourself, am I ready? Are those zombies? Or just feckin' birds again? And to throw you off guard if you're doing well playing like a smart and stealthy survivor, the game likes to throw sudden hordes of undead at you when you least expect it. On repeat playthroughs, these remain memorable and the stress comes back knowing they're gonna come. You'll find yourself unlocking shortcuts and coming back to the safe house with new tools and upgrades at your disposal, allowing you to unlock routes in places you've been before. The game is kinda like a Metroidvania. In fact, with this title screen and these scanning mechanics, I'm seeing some similarities to Metroid Prime. It's a shame Zombie U didn't do so well at the time because I really wanted a sequel. In fact, one was considered, but the game didn't sell well enough in Ubisoft's eyes for them to greenlight it. This is a real shame because I think Zombie U was ahead of its time. I believe if this game was released and marketed today, it would have been done so as a Souls-like. In fact, when Zombie U was released in November 2012, Dark Souls 1 had just turned a year old, so the term probably hadn't been coined yet. This game is so similar to Dark Souls. A 3D Metroidvania with slow and methodical combat? Check. Online player messages and hints? Check. Have your player and items appear in other players' games? Check. Permadeath and item loss mechanics? Check. Wow, Zombie U is a Souls-like. Dark Souls' most stressful and punishing mechanic upon death involves having to go back to where you died and retrieve your souls. If you died trying, then it's night-night forever for those souls. Zombie U expands this concept even further, for if you die, not only do you start again at the safe house from scratch as a new in-universe survivor, if you want your previous survivors' stuff back, you're gonna have to go back to where you died, only to have to pry them back from the cold dead hands of your last self. The strength of whom will be determined by how strong your character was when they died. If you die trying this, those items are redistributed across the entire map. This is awesome as hell. These zombies used to appear in other survivors' worlds too, back when the online was still working. Meaning at the time you could get a pretty good idea of how safe certain places were, based on the amount of spray paint messages scattered about, or how many player zombies were patrolling the area. The game even has a hardest difficulty where the HP of zombies is ramped all the way up, and if you die then it's game over forever. I've never survived this myself. In fact, I've never made it to the end of normal in one survivor, meaning that I've never even seen the good ending. And I'll say it again, it's a shame that this game didn't get a sequel. There is so much potential here that could be expanded further. And while the game can be speedrun in an hour and a half, the game will softlock you if you try certain things out of order. You'll also see this loading screen a lot. And while I am fine with the melee combat, I can see why others may not gel with it. Hell, I still don't even know why sometimes I will one-hit a zombie. But with a sequel, they could have more time to flesh out some things. Purposely design a sequence-breakable map with less loading and more immersive interconnectivity. They could even add more melee variety, more zombie variety, a day and night system with its own risks and rewards. Maybe even Soul-style co-op? I'm just spitballing here, but what if you could ping an SOS via the prepper pad to summon another online survivor to help you? I don't even know if a proper sequel is even possible using another controller, but Ubisoft, please, prove me wrong. This game is such an underrated gem, I think. I'll never forget the day I read that the sequel had been shelved. I still make an active effort to replay this every couple of years. It's my favourite survival horror, because despite the stress, it remains fun, unlike Alien Isolation, another survival horror I considered for this list, until I remembered that I don't have fun when I'm hiding in lockers for 50% of the time. As for every time you'll be scared and surrounded by a seemingly endless supply of spawning zombies in a murky and pretty accurate representation of a British street, the game will equally subvert your expectations with unforgettable moments. The first horde at the bunker while it's pouring torrential rain and thundering violently, walking into the zombie rave at Brick Lane Flats, exploring the interior of a burning Buckingham Palace, being captured by King Boris and forced to survive his game without your gear. The game's graphical presentation lands a striking balance of both bleak and beautiful. The lighting is impressive, and I love how this murky filter over the camera gets exaggerated by light sources. The audio design also lands the same balance, with ambient sounds which make playing with headphones twice as scary. The OST manages to convey the appropriate emotions too, whether it's the somber piano of the main theme reminding you that you're alone but alive in a fallen city, or the high energy rocking guitars used in the horde encounters. Zombie U really is the full package, and one you can replay again and again, and might just be the Wii U's killer app. It even has asymmetric multiplayer. One player is a survivor on the TV, the other manages and places zombies on the map using the gamepad. This is something that again can only be done on a Wii U gamepad. This is why Zombie U is my 9th favourite game of all time. Number 8. Monster Hunter Tri was my very first entry into the Monster Hunter series. I was made aware of the game thanks to the hype provided by the official Nintendo magazine. They seemed pretty happy that the game had been stolen from PS3 and headed to Wii, and while I was at college, I was further exposed to the game through my friend who played Monster Hunter Freedom Unite on his PSP. He was always enthusiastic about using dual blades and the fact that your helpers are all cats. And when the game had finally released, it was during a period in my life when I was on my own. It was just myself and my Nintendo Wii with no internet. I can't tell you how many times I watched this intro cutscene, but I always loved the way it all plays out in time with the music. Reminds me of the opening of Disney's Dinosaur. After creating my character, I was introduced to the peaceful and tranquil Moga village, a village upon the sea on the coast of the deserted isle. The villagers are all going about their day-to-day lives until an earthquake trembles and spooks the villagers. They gather around the village chief and in walks your hunter. I love this intro, perfectly and without dialogue giving you a taste of your setting and eventual objectives. I am a monster hunter, and I must protect this village from whatever is causing these quakes. The game takes you on a tutorial for an hour or two, allowing you to come to grips with mechanics such as gathering, carving, cooking meat, swimming, and combat. Once you have completed these introductory missions, you are free to explore and progress through the quest ranks at your own pace. And you'll need to take it easy when going into any Monster Hunter game for the first time. There are many deep in-game systems and mechanics to help you become a more efficient hunter, and you'll slowly discover them all one by one. I could waffle on about how I didn't really understand the game at first, and list the many things that I didn't realise existed, but if you've seen any other Monster Hunter video, you've probably already heard it all before, and I would like to keep this video as short as possible. I'll cut a long story short and say it took me over the course of 2 years to get to the point where I fully understood the game, and I'll never forget the days of just free hunting in the Moga woods to gather and hunt till my heart's content. This game is pretty immersive and alive. The monsters, big and small, all move in their own ways and can be recognised with enough observation. Yet their dynamic AI means that no two encounters will ever be the same, adding an enjoyable layer of unpredictability. And the combat. It took ages for it to click with me, because for the longest time I just used a sword and shield, but one day I decided on a whim to try out this electric long sword I was given by the village argosy trader near the end of the village quest, and once I found my combo, it became like a dance. Spending so much time getting to know this amazing cast of creatures paid off when I finally found the satisfaction of timing my swings with the moves of the monster, knowing when I'm safe to hit and where my attacks can reposition me. And the lack of traditional gamey elements like numbers and health bars meant I really had to pay attention to the monsters themselves. Over the course of hunts, I was in a loop of offense, defense and chase, using the tools that I have prepared to help me get the edge. I became such an efficient hunter that I felt like I was truly in tune with nature whenever I played, and a lot of the fun of Monster Hunter, for me, is the discovery. It takes me back to my childhood discovering things about Pokemon for the first time, and I suppose not having the internet only enhanced my experience further. I think for the future I would like to go into any new game I play as blind as possible. Another element that adds to the immersion, at least for me, is the fact that you could follow some monsters underwater. And after playing other games in the series, I still wish that I could follow aquatic monsters in their own turf. I know it was clunky, there's no doubt it could be improved. I hated being in the murky and weedy waters of the flooded forest too, but I think that's the point. We're out of our element, we're in their turf now, and I love how aquatic monsters change their movesets underwater. You see, I am under the impression that the larger Monster Hunter community doesn't really like the underwater combat, and I feel like a small minority who liked it. It was removed in the following game, Monster Hunter 4, which is still a solid game with a cast of monsters and a level of verticality that made it memorable in its own right. But then Generations decided to bring back some of my favourite Leviathans to be fought exclusively on land, which stripped them of their original appeal. And since Monster Hunter Generations, we have been seeing more and more action-y and anime-looking gimmicks and movement options that I think the series is starting to lose some of what originally drew me in. I miss the days where the movement was more grounded and weighty. It helps with my immersion. Which brings me back to swimming. I miss it. Having the freedom to explore these vast underwater areas complete with immersive visual and audio effects, and unique creatures to study too. Even when you were alone in the water, the atmosphere felt serene and peaceful. Nothing has come close since. Well, Monster Hunter World came close. That is one immersive and impressive game. I would probably say it's my second favourite Monster Hunter. However, it started to introduce some quality of life features that I feel are also stripping Monster Hunter of its identity. Because I also miss the preparation for the hunt itself. I spent lots of time in the older games gathering resources and free hunting in each game's respective unlimited hunting area. It was pretty much mandatory that you do so, otherwise you'd be missing out on useful items for your hunts. Nowadays, Monster Hunter games like to hand everything you'll ever need in bulk, and you'll never have to actually think about it again. You used to have to commit to a hunt with everything you were going to take and survive on that, but now you are given a camp so you may completely switch your gear mid-hunt. The most recent entry, Rise, has streamlined everything to such a degree that I feel conflicted about it. I still feel like it's a fantastic game, but this isn't what I enjoy about Monster Hunter. Why bother learning the monster behaviours when I can see them on the map at all times? Why even learn the map at all? And all this Attack on Titan, Spider-Man wirebug flipping and flying about is fun and cool, but it completely removes all challenge. Same goes for Iceborne's Clutch Claw, which became a too reliable method for opening lots and lots of attack opportunities. I miss the days of Monster Hunter feeling like a fair challenge, feeling like a semi-realistic hunting simulator with a hint of charm. I miss when the stories of these games were non-intrusive and didn't take themselves too seriously. Honestly, the Gen 5 games have all made me cringe with their attempts to be epic. I miss the days of Gen 3. Towards the end of my time with Tri, I was living with a new friend, and he had just started to get into the game with his own save file, after being enamoured by my own gameplay. He got his first taste via Tri's unique split screen mode, which allowed us to tackle these arena quests together co-op, and the rewards would get sent to your character save, which would be stored on your Wii remote. I had a lot of fun doing so. We even considered getting a second copy of the game so we could enter high rank together and experience the online co-op for the first time. After all, I had both a Wii U and my original Wii still. Alas, by the time I finally had internet and we were ready to join high rank, the online servers were going offline. Oh well, I still had plenty of fun doing co-op in split screen mode, which is why Monster Hunter Tri isn't my 8th favourite game of all time, because as much time as I spent with my very first Monster Hunter, Tri felt like a demo compared to Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. Released in March 2013 for both the Wii U and 3DS, is the reason why the Wii game servers went offline. Good move, Capcom. Awful decision or not, it had me buy both the Wii U version for my housemate to play on, and the 3DS version, so I could play co-op with him cross-platform. And you know, playing on 3DS with the 3D on only made the game more immersive and massively helped with the underwater depth perception. With more monsters, more areas, more weapons, another charming assistant and another rank of difficulty in G rank. Technically too, since I never got to experience the original game's high rank, which was locked behind the online, and I got to experience most of it with my new friend, my first hunting buddy. And since we used different weapons and had different yet complementary playstyles, we were constantly making and sharing new discoveries with each other, looking out for each other's health, developing a sense of comradeship, realising that positioning was doubly important as your hits would affect your teammates. It was so funny every time he sent me flying with his greatsword, and doubly funny that when Mountain was added in 4, I could shout, "Launch me!" and I could now attack while mid-air and get a chance to topple any monster we were fighting. I'll never forget the discoveries we made together. I never knew Goebel's tail could come off, since solo I was always going for the lantern on my own. And then one day my friend chopped it off and my mind was blown. Co-op encouraged me to learn other weapons too, like the hunting horn, and our minds were equally blown the first time we broke a Baroth's crown. Or the first time we fought a Deviljaw in the tundra, and he only opened up a never seen before area when he was weak. I could go on and on and on and just list every single hardship, triumph and Monster Hunter memory, but instead of that, I highly recommend you give Monster Hunter a go for yourself. Whether you want a challenging solo experience to grind out and spend lots of time with, or you just want to kill some cool monsters with your friends every now and then. There's no better time to get into Monster Hunter, and I'm happy that the series has finally gained the respect it's always deserved and took off in the West. The Gen 5 games are the most accessible games yet, and I'm thankful that they have gotten my current friend circle into Monster Hunter too. However, with accessibility and success comes a cost. I've already expressed how I feel about the quality of life features and the streamlining introduced in Gen 5, but we're also starting to get incomplete games. You can't fool me, Capcom, disguising the rest of the game as a free content update. It didn't feel so bad with World. Everything that came after the base game genuinely felt like bonus content. But with Iceborne, Rise and Sunbreak, I really did feel the pain of having to wait for content that felt like it was supposed to be in the base game. Monster Hunter should not feel like a live service game. I miss the days where we got complete games on day one, that we could enjoy fully without ever having to wait for more content, and the only post-game content would just be cool rewards and silly quests that you could unlock for free. This is why Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate is my 8th favourite game of all time. Number 7. Now, it's no secret that I love Sonic the Hedgehog, but you're all probably wondering, what is my favourite Sonic game of all time? I could only pick one for this list, so it really was a no-brainer, but allow me to explain why first. I was raised on the classic 2D Sonic games. As far back as I can remember, I had a Sega Master System 2 with Sonic built in and Sonic 2 on a cartridge. I played the 16-bit titles with Sonic Jam on the Saturn. However, there was a period of time in my childhood where Sonic didn't exist at all. For a good chunk of my childhood, Pokemon and Mario had completely taken over, as one Christmas I received a Game Boy Pocket with the Mario Land games, and the Pokemon anime was sweeping the nation with its toys, trading cards, stickers and games coming into my life later. So, imagine what must be going through the mind of a 14-year-old who only remembers Sonic as just a cool, forgotten character from his childhood when they experience this.
Sigma Alpha 2 heading due south over the city. We're en route. Everything's a go.
This is Control Tower. We have you on radar. Report cargo status of captured Hedgehog aboard. Over.
That's a 10-4. Cargo secured on board and... What?
Didn't
The
copy that.
Hedgehog is
Over.
gone. He's taken out everyone aboard and...
What's wrong?
What in the
Come
world?
in. Over.
budget flights, no food or movies. I'm out of here. I like running better. Yeah!
Attention all
Sonic Adventure 2 Battle on the GameCube was always an enigma to me, even before I got to experience it. I remember seeing it all the time in the Argos catalogue's very small GameCube section. The art style and the characters is what stood out the most. What is this game? So of course it was amongst the first ever games I picked up for my GameCube, along with Batman Begins. And after playing Heroes and Sonic Adventure DX, I can confidently affirm that my favourite is this one. I don't mean to start a flame war between fans of adventure and Heroes, but in comparison, I just prefer the feel of this game. Compared to Sonic Adventure 1, I find it to have better gameplay, as I like all three different gameplay styles. I'm glad the devs chose to keep the strongest gameplay styles from the first game. I much prefer the pacing of Sonic Adventure 2. I appreciate that things have been streamlined and that power-ups are hidden within the levels themselves. I prefer how Sonic Adventure 2 presents itself. A steady 60 FPS really helps a game age in my eyes. I love how expressive the animation is too, and I think that the voice acting is a huge improvement over the first game. The motion capture may look odd to some fans, but I think it adds a lot of charm. I prefer the pacing of the story. I would rather have this delivery of cutscene, gameplay, over the way Adventure 1 makes you find the next progression trigger yourself, and to have a hero story and a dark story was just so enticing. Play as the bad guys, yes please. And the way this story is presented with both playthroughs and intertwines with one another to fill in the gaps is executed so much better than having to repeat so many of the same beats multiple times like Adventure 1 and Heroes makes you. I also really dig this soundtrack. I mean, all Sonic games have great soundtracks, but this one is so high octane and varied for each character that it stands out as the winner. Opening the game with these rockin' themes made such a big impression on me. If it weren't for Sonic Adventure 2, I don't think I'd still be the Sonic fan I am today. Sonic Adventure 2 was so epic that it single-handedly reinvigorated my interest in the Blue Blur. After finishing this story, I just had to go out and collect the rest of the games available. I had to check out Sonic Adventure DX, I had to check out Heroes and see the deal with Shadow. I got the Mega Collection and experienced the classics fully and fell in love with them again. This caused teenage me to collect all of the Mega Drive games for real and look at emulation and ROM hacking. I'm glad it was on the GameCube as well that I fell in love with Sonic again. The GameCube went on to have 7 titles in total. Towards the end of that generation we were also treated to the Gems collection, which introduced me to CD, and Riders, one of the best racing games ever. Having so much Sonic available on the Nintendo platforms I owned meant a lot to me, as I wasn't one of the cool kids with a PS2 or an Xbox. Instead, this ex-Sega kid went on to have a Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, GameCube, Wii and DS. And Sonic Adventure 2 was to thank for this beautiful union of two former rivals. It was kinda destiny. Amongst my happy memories and multiple playthroughs of Sonic Adventure 2 are also playing the multiplayer modes with my sister. I miss the days of having a player 2 to play these games with, and Sonic Adventure 2 had the best multiplayer mode in my opinion. 16-bit Sonic 2 was cool, but I was always disappointed by how little levels there were. I had no idea what to do in Heroes, and Shadow was just rubbish. So I guess it helps having so many modes to play. And while I never 100%ed this game, in fact, I have never 100%ed any 3D Sonic game, barring Colours, which barely counts as 3D, it is still the one that I go out my way to replay at least once a year. It's a lot of fun to speed through this casually like it's my favourite interactive movie. I don't care that it hasn't aged that well for modern gamers. I don't care that the plot doesn't really hold up under scrutiny. I don't care that some of the dialogue is out of sync or that the audio mixing is complete arse. Sonic Adventure 2, to me, is peak Sonic, and a height that the series has rarely been able to top. I mean, it's come close, but mainly in spin-offs. This is why Sonic Adventure 2 is my 7th favourite game of all time. Number 6. When I was heavily into the Monster Hunter series and showed the 3DS games off to recommend to other gamers, they would always bring up Dark Souls. They would say that the combat reminded them of it and would recommend it to me based on how hard it was. And over time, as YouTube gaming communities grew, so did the reputation of Dark Souls and its difficulty. We got to a point where if any hard game was released, it would be called the Dark Souls of insert genre here. I will admit I found this pretty annoying, and it only added to my reluctance to try the game. I mean, I do like a challenge. That's always been baked into me. I had played the Monster Hunter games to death and they're no walk in the park. Hell, one of my favourite 8-bit games is Sonic 2, and that's famous for its difficulty. I clearly had an appetite for challenging boss fights, with my love of the Metroid series, and I'm complaining that Pokemon games have gotten too easy lately. So why did I not want to play Dark Souls? I guess the premise of the game was always pitched to me wrong, and now that I understand the game better, I can say that calling Dark Souls a punishingly hard game is selling it short. Now that I understand Dark Souls, I feel that Dark Souls is nothing short of a flawed masterpiece. It certainly doesn't help that when I first met my best friend Jay, he showed me Dark Souls too eagerly without giving me any breathing space. Of course, back then I was a lot more mentally unstable, I couldn't control my emotions and my attention span was all over the place. My first taste of Dark Souls is nothing but a memory of fear, laughter at my expense, a feeling of embarrassment. I felt powerless, like a child at school cornered by bullies for my naivety. It left a very sour taste in my mouth, and I'm surprised I gave the game a second chance. But as our friendship grew, so did I. I started working on my YouTube channel and started to stimulate my brain with creativity again. I started to learn patience through my work, and I learned how to properly listen to others through other YouTubers. I honed my gaming skills further through friendly competition with Jay, who seems to naturally become very skilled at any game he tries. I love a bit of friendly competition, and Jay can be a good mentor. Some of the best gaming memories I have were playing Monster Hunter World together on PS4, and naturally, the topic of Dark Souls would come up often as others in the party would reminisce on their Dark Souls memories. I started to see a similarity between the two series' combat, and I started to think, hey, I'm pretty good at these Monster Hunter games. Dancing with and attacking massive enemies while managing my health and stamina. I can see myself actually being good at Dark Souls, and yeah, I know death in a game is a teaching tool, it's okay to die. I made a mental note to give Dark Souls a second chance, and then it wasn't long until I saw the perfect pitch for Dark Souls. Mark Brown, a YouTuber better known as Game Maker's Toolkit, was covering the map design of the Metroid Prime games as part of his Boss Keys video series. These excellent videos made me subscribe to his channel. One day, I was chilling with Jay, and Dark Souls came up in conversation, so we looked on YouTube for videos on the game when a previously unseen Mark Brown video popped up about Dark Souls, so I played it, and in the video, he said this.
It's at this moment you realise that the world of Dark Souls is very different to most other games. It's not a linear series of zones, but a complex, maze-like world that branches off into different areas, then loops back around on itself through shortcuts and elevators. It seems to snap together like a fancy 3D jigsaw puzzle, and exploring this world feels like navigating a Metroid map or a Zelda dungeon.
Thank you GMT for making the perfect pitch. So Jay and I made a deal. He would play Metroid Prime and I would play Dark Souls. It really does help that once you get past the tutorial and receive the White Soap Stone from Solaire, you can enjoy this game co-op with others. And I love co-op games. Jay and I would spend many happy afternoons chilling in this world, intertwined with watching him play Prime and watching so many of what would become my favourite anime shows. I was going through a tough time dealing with the consequences of leaving university, that being in the world of Lordran was a peaceful escape. I had the determination to make it, I had developed the patience to take it, and I had the best company to support me so that when the pressure built up, I could easily shake it. And Dark Souls is designed to be so open that you have the freedom to break it. Even once my co-op time was over, I never stopped playing this game. I have went on to use up all my save files so I can tackle this game in a number of ways. The game provides enough options via leveling up your stats and summoning that it doesn't need an easy mode. Want an easier time? Try intelligence, or faith, or dexterity. You can add a bow to your inventory or learn pyromancy. You can summon offline NPCs to help with some of the tougher boss fights, or summon real online players who are usually better and can help guide you, and is balanced out with the risk of also being invaded. I'll be honest with you all too, I've never been able to solo Ornstein or Smo, or defeat Gwyn without either a distraction or heavily investing in my vitality, but that's okay. Dark Souls is your open playground to play and experiment as you wish. The Master Key is the gift to start the game with, as once you've landed in Firelink Shrine, you have the freedom to go pretty much anywhere, if you have the skill to back it up. I remember on my very first playthrough, I wasn't listening to the NPCs, so I wandered down into the catacombs, and then down into New Londor ruins, and at the time I didn't know what to do, and it was clear to me that this isn't the way I'm meant to go in terms of game design. Once you see how this world connects up and loops back and have the knowledge on how to get through any area, it becomes very fun to try things out of order on repeat playthroughs, or skip things entirely. I really do see how this game is like a Metroidvania. And if we say that Super Metroid is peak Metroid, then yes, Dark Souls is a perfect 3D Metroidvania because, like Super, it has some jank, it has some bullshit, hidden walls galore. The map has you descend deeper into its world and you'll find yourself unlocking shortcuts and backtracking to previous areas. The finale of the game is locked behind 4 bosses that you have to take down in order to access. Dark Souls even does what Metroid Prime does and turns previous bosses into regular enemies later on in the game. Bonfires are like save stations and provide the same calm and relief when I'm there. And is it me, or are these colour palettes also very similar? Maybe I'm looking too deep into it. Anyway, Dark Souls has been a very rewarding experience for me, whether it's uncovering every secret on my own, or introducing friends to the game and being their guide, reading about lore and watching endless streams of YouTube content inspired by the game, or just having a save file to be a summon for others in boss hotspots, or listening to its beautiful soundtrack in isolation. I love this game so much, and I only started playing 2 years ago. So if you've been on the fence, I really do recommend that you try Dark Souls. Whether you're a fan of the dance between player and boss, you crave a mostly fair challenge, you're a fan of Metroidvanias or RPGs, or just want a chill game you can enjoy with your friends, I guarantee that this game will also enrich your soul. If you ever see a summon in the Nintendo Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered called Night of Wind, I hope that we'll praise the sun together and know that I'm still deeply immersed and having fun fighting my way through the same area for the 200th time. This is why Dark Souls is my 6th favourite game of all time. And look at that, I talked about Dark Souls without mentioning Demon Souls, mainly because I've never played it. Number 5. Have you ever heard the term perfect video game? I can't remember where I heard it, but this term is often given to game concepts which are executed so perfectly that the game cannot be improved. Games that are so simple anyone can pick up and understand what to do. These games can only be cloned or re-released with better graphics or extra experimental gimmicks. Which games would you consider calling a perfect video game? Games that come to my mind include Tetris, Crazy Taxi, Wii Sports. How about Rocket League? I remember it being the name of just another free game I downloaded from PlayStation Plus. It was for about a year that I completely ignored the game until I saw it being played by a friend on their gaming PC. The gameplay looked like the realisation of a fantasy game I had always dreamed of, thanks to the idea of car football being explored in Top Gear, one of my favourite TV shows growing up. What is this game called? I need to buy it. Rocket League? Wait, I already own this game. Rocket League is very simple to understand and pick up and play for beginners. Get the ball in the goal. Not our goal, their goal.
In the goal!
It uses standard controls that any fan of racing games will instantly be familiar with, and the ball physics are incredibly consistent. Sounds simple, doesn't it? The feeling of getting a goal in feels so good. I love how the game has evolved over time to let you customize your victory, from your goal explosion to the music that plays via the anthems. I remember feeling like I was amazing at the game back then. I think that we all feel that at some point. The buzz and rush of scoring is a dopamine hit like no other, regardless of rank. I feel like the game has mostly amazing matchmaking that ensures players of all skill levels will be fairly matched when jumping online. Casual play does what it says on the tin, and you can choose a number of game modes. Chaos is just that. I hate this game mode. I can't make heads or tails of what is going on usually. There's too much for me to keep my two eyes on and I get sensory overload. Maybe spiders would be good at this mode. 3v3 feels like a gamble, but ultimately a satisfying mode to jump into, especially if you are part of a party of 3 that you can trust. It's fairly low stakes and more laid back. Having the magic number allows for more breathing space within the rotation of the team. I only feel like it's a gamble because with randoms, I usually find myself sitting back while I watch the other 2 teammates chase without rotating. 2v2 is my perfect game mode. 2 opponents to watch, 1 teammate, usually my friend Jay, if not, a random who I can quickly get acquainted with. The pace of my 2v2 games feels very high paced and fun. I love how 2 different players can complement each other so long as they have mutual respect. 1v1 is a very difficult game mode. I don't play it often, but when I do I enjoy the challenge. If I make a mistake in 1v1 I have nobody but myself to blame, and I really do learn a lot from this game mode. I'm always left thinking after a 1v1 fluff, how could I have avoided that? Now I'm not going to claim to be a pro at Rocket League. My highest rank is Plat 3 in doubles, and that is mainly thanks to my fantastic teammate Jay, who is a champ. I do feel kinda nervous talking about this game, and rarely stream the game because I know I'm mid. However, I have noticed and come to greatly admire the mechanical depth and complexity of the game. When I stopped having tunnel vision for the ball and started to pay attention and respect my teammates and opponents, I started to realise that the game isn't as simple as I had initially thought. I have the highest respect and regard for the players who have mastered every aspect of this fascinating and beautiful game. The skill ceiling for Rocket League is the highest I have ever seen in a game. It's more than just pushing buttons and reacting to simple stimuli. I must become the rocket-powered battle car. And the game's movement options, physics and rules are so intricately designed in combination with its customizable controls that when I play I am incredibly immersed and I have the potential to master them and be 100% in control. I am incredibly inconsistent though. You need to go in with the right energy, give it your all and dynamically react to every micro gameplay moment. The game is as much about watching and trying to bait your opponent as it is trying to match the speed and path of the ball. Then I can make one tiny mistake within a second that will result in a goal for the opposition, and the explanation and lesson can take up to 30 seconds to discuss. The amount of micro decisions an attentive player has to make within a second itself is mind-blowingly large when I think about it. The list of rules, reactions and readjustments I have to make in any given situation is so gargantuan that I simply do not have time to list them all. There are much better people on YouTube who can teach you the fundamentals. I'm just mental. I play so chaotically that I even throw my own teammates off sometimes, to which I do apologise. But if you put the time in and learn, either through mentorship, tutorials or good old monkey see, monkey do, you'll feel yourself improve. I find the most satisfaction in watching the esports and battling J 1v1. There are even extra ingenious game modes that specialise in forcing the player to learn skills that they can take back into ranked play to help improve their game. Snow Day excellently encourages strong ground play and positioning, while encouraging the player to learn how to dribble with a heavy puck that is easier to control than a ball. Drop shot is a personal favourite that really encouraged me to fly and block and defend effectively. The player scores by damaging holes in the ground, subtly improving their ability to aim and think about where the ball is going to land. Hoops gives the player a floatier yet heavier basketball in a smaller arena where the goal is a hoop suspended in the air. I feel this mode improves judging angles and the ability to control the power of a shot. The floatier ball encourages me to slow down and think about my positioning. I feel like this game mode is very close combat and good training for 2v2. The fact the goal is suspended on a wall also taught me how to defend from the wall better. Rumble used to be a personal favourite and it's brilliant. Imagine if Mario Kart and Rocket League had a baby. Randomly selected power-ups are granted after 10 seconds of having an empty slot. This game mode definitely encourages communication, otherwise these games will just be pure chaos if every player uses their powers willy-nilly and without consideration. It also prepares the players to be ready for literally anything. There is even an in-depth training mode, where you can browse community-made presets to help you improve your high-level player. I don't really do this, mainly because if I did, I know I'd be bloody addicted. I only have time to master one series featuring a crazy chaotic ball of physics. And you can play this game too. Rocket League was one of the pioneers of cross-platform play. No matter if you own a PC, a Switch, a PlayStation or Xbox, Rocket League is available for all to enjoy, no matter where you play. I have a ton of respect for Psyonix. The game is completely free as well, that's a bonus. Well, it wasn't free for me at the time. I went on to buy the full game on every single platform I owned. I feel the game is that good that it deserves it. The base game offers enough free rewards and cosmetics that any player can express themselves. And it's thankfully miles away from when the game had completely been taken over by loot boxes, which I regrettably spent a lot of money on back in their heyday. Never again. I have enough crazy cool stuff now that I don't need anymore. I've been rocking the wolf banner since I received it. But hey, this game is worth every penny. I have no regrets supporting this amazing game. And you never know when a Painted Lightning or Walking on the Moon anthem might get added to the store. So pick up a controller, be the ball. You're gonna win some, you're gonna lose some, but don't give up. Try to improve and I guarantee that every single game you play will be exciting, dynamic and different. There really is no game quite like Rocket League, which is why it's my 5th favourite game of all time. Number 4. From one title I consider a perfect game, to another genre full of them. Rhythm games as a whole are a pretty simple genre of games to understand. All you need to jump right on in is your enthusiasm for music. The best ones have difficulty options which allow you to slowly develop your sense of rhythm at your own pace. The first ever rhythm game I ever played, I think, was Donkey Konga. It was a very cool game, using a bongo controller as its instrument. However, its track list I felt was pretty lame, and it didn't entice me to replay it much. The music wasn't really me. Mind you, I didn't have much of an identity as a child. I remember being asked at school what my favourite band was, and I didn't know. Panicked on the spot and said, Ali G, because that dumb movie was popular at the time. But I do remember that I listened to a lot of rock. My mother listened to artists like Tom Petty and Meat Loaf, the latter of whom I really enjoyed, while modern Sonic games had exposed me to some amazingly high energy guitar solos that I have never been able to forget. I have even briefly learned guitar and piano when I was young. So it was destiny that I was introduced to the Guitar Hero series when I met my first friend at college. His favourite bands at the time were Children of Bodom and Paramore, and when I heard these musicians for the first time, it changed me forever. And when I experienced Guitar Hero for the first time, I was enamoured. What a perfect game concept. What a perfect controller. I have nothing much to say except that this is genius. Now I remember a lot of debate at the time about whether or not Guitar Hero actually teaches people how to play music. There were a lot of naysayers. I have this to say on the subject. Guitar Hero is such a perfect simulation of the feeling of empowerment that one has to feel when they actually have the ability to do this in real life. You get an immersive and high quality sound that dynamically changes depending on how well you play. If you want your song to sound good, you will have to earn it. This game does somewhat teach people the basics that are required in order to learn real instruments. To play masterfully on expert difficulty requires a focus and muscle memory and sense of rhythm that has to be beneficial for beginners. It doesn't matter if the controller isn't accurate at all. The game delivers such an immersive audio and visual experience for those who master the thrill of the game's most challenging note arrangements that there's no way the player doesn't feel the same kind of empowerment that a real-life master musician and performer must feel. Guitar Hero is inspiring, and it certainly inspired myself to discover many songs and musicians who have gone on to live forever rent-free in my music library. If you got into music via rhythm games, I think that is so cool and I want to hear about it. And while I have never gone on to master any musical instruments, I still have a desire to, and I have such a deep love and appreciation of a wide range of music genres, and I have Guitar Hero to thank for that. And as I grew older, so did the Guitar Hero series. We got more games with more songs, features, and instruments. World Tour was such a great step forward for the series by introducing true co-op via band play. And the drums were an amazing instrument that quickly became my main over the guitar. Same with my friend. We had to take turns, but I have many happy memories of just rocking as a band for hours and hours every day, and it never got boring. Drumming even became my daily morning exercise routine, as I built up quite the sweat on Expert Plus. Guitar Hero 5 and Band Hero both became replacements for World, with its addition of allowing for more than one of each instrument. David and I could finally drum together simultaneously, cooperating so that we don't fail the song, yet competing for a better percentage as we were both on the same difficulty. Guitar Hero fuels many of my inner desires, my need to exercise and push myself, my need to be part of a team, my competitive nature, my inner spirit of rhythm that I have never been able to contain. And we played the series on the Wii, which was my platform of choice, and favoured because there was no lag due to the Wii remote plugging into the guitar like it was a nunchuck, and the fact that Activision were 100% committed to supporting the Wii with DLC and import packs. They were good times. By the time Warriors of Rock had launched, we pretty much had every song, hundreds of random songs to play whenever, and an impressive collection of instruments and spares and repairs. It was a shame that Guitar Hero 6 was an unintentional swan song. It's by far the best game in the series. Takes me back to Guitar Hero 3 with its career mode, and it's the game that introduced me to the band Rush. Activision drowned the marketplace in many unnecessary standalone releases that could have easily been DLC packs. They cancelled the series after 6 failed to reach sales targets. They killed their own series. I was heartbroken. I remember this parody song released on YouTube the day the news broke. It felt like the end of an era. Except it's a good thing that Harmonix, the original creators of Guitar Hero, never lost sight of the fun and importance of occasional releases and truly did the heavy lifting when it comes to advancing the rhythm game genre. Rock Band was the first game to do the whole play as a whole band shtick. Guitar Hero stole that. Rock Band 2 featured a variation of different genres and an interesting track list with a DLC library with thousands of songs available. Even to Wii owners, Harmonix went just as hard in supporting the Wii as Activision did, and I feel they did a more inclusive job. Rock Band 2's Wii port was very impressive, and I'll never forget when my great aunt, who lives in the USA, bought Rock Band 2 for me one lonely Christmas while I was living in supported accommodation. Rock Band 3 also came to the Wii and provided more of an evolution than Guitar Hero ever managed. It added keytar and came with a real MIDI keyboard. It was even compatible with every single kind of relevant music controller you could think of, and its DLC store just kept on growing. You could even import previous games' libraries to 3. And to truly show the naysayers who's wrong, they only went and made full-on versions of musical instrument controllers, each with their own advanced teaching modes that would actually teach you how to play real music, or just plug in a real compatible instrument. I think this was a response to Rocksmith, which I haven't played myself, but heard other gamers talk about when it came to the philosophical question on whether rhythm games do indeed teach you real music skills. And while I never actually played these modes, at least with the guitar anyway, those things cost way too much money at the time. I did get a taste of it thanks to the game coming with the keyboard, so I once again found myself learning piano, just like the brief time I spent as a child doing so. The drums even had a pro mode, where if you had any extra cymbals, they would be accurately represented on the note bar. So with all these features in mind, and the many happy days I spent playing all these games, and the fact that Rock Band as a series is still alive, I can't help but feel Rock Band 3 is the best rhythm game of all time, and by default, that makes it my 4th favourite game of all time. Rock Band 4 never came to the Wii U, so I felt abandoned as a customer who had invested so much money in Wii instruments and DLC, and I hear the fan base crying out for new controllers for their PlayStations and Xboxes. It's time for either a new Guitar Hero or Rock Band, and I'm inclined to say Rock Band because I trust Harmonix more. Activision already tried and failed to revive Guitar Hero with Live, a soulless reinvention of Guitar Hero as a paid live service. It had 0% heart and about 5% of the content of the last game in the series. What a disappointment. And I know Harmonix is owned by Epic Games now, but if we take that potential budget and just let Harmonix do their thing with complete control, then I'm sure I'll be streaming Rock Band 5 on my Nintendo Switch successor sometime in the distant future, staying in shape and keeping my inner spirit alive, and maybe that game will replace Rock Band 3 as my 4th favourite game of all time. Number 3. I alluded to it earlier, but there was indeed a time in my life where my Game Boy Pocket had completely taken over as my console of choice. One Christmas, I received it with a copy of the 2 Mario Land games. I'm quite fond of both, though these are not the games I will be talking about. I remember that I wanted a copy of Pokemon so bad when I got my Game Boy, but I would have to make do with the toys, books and cards first. I was still in my single digits when Pokemania swept the nation in 1999. The anime had started airing every Saturday morning on ITV. I remember being one of the first kids to get into Pokemon at my school. I have very clear memories of bringing to school a toy Pikachu and being surrounded for the whole day, being asked questions about Pokemon names. I remember not having the confidence to say, I don't know, regarding Pokemon like Geodude, who I said was called Rocky. I was a funny kid. Anyway, as Pokemania spread to our playgrounds, I eventually fell behind. I didn't have a lot of toys. They mysteriously vanished. I can't remember where my sticker albums went. The only trading cards I had were the ones my dad would bring home because he found them on the buses he was driving. I remember very soon, before schools decided to ban Pokemon, I traded a rare Japanese Venusaur card for a huge stack of cards from a friend. And then the ban hit. Suddenly kids weren't allowed to bring things to school anymore. It was very weird. And this is when everything kind of becomes a blur. I remember being lightly exposed to the games from those who had them, but I never had a copy to call my own. That changed one summer when my parents received a large amount of money and decided to treat us all. I finally got a copy of Red, even though I wanted Blue, and many trading card game decks. So if I wasn't at school, I was in my bedroom playing Pokemon until Sonic came back into my life. The reason I'm talking about these specific memories is because I really cannot remember much of my first ever playthrough of the game. I can remember little bits and bobs, like some of my Pokemon nicknames, the fact I chose Squirtle as my starter because I liked all of the blue Pokemon. I just can't pinpoint specific times I discovered things about the game, because Pokemon feels so deeply embedded into my brain that it all feels like deja vu. Even when I played the game for the first time, I got this feeling of deja vu. Was it the anime coming first? Was it the merch? Was it playground word of mouth? Was it a book I read? I think I might have read a guide for Pokemon Yellow before ever playing Red, because I do remember knowing exactly what to do and where to go and what was going to happen. I think this guide was written like a diary of sorts, like a first-person perspective on the Gen 1 journey, but I can't find any books that match this description. But it gave me the knowledge going in on every last detail, right down to the potion hidden in the tree in Viridian City. The more I try to think of the first time I played Pokemon, I just remember more and more that each element was shown to me first from an external source. I was even told about talking to the old man and swimming up and down Cinnabar to make Missing No duplicate your 6th item before I ever finished it. It's very surreal, not being able to remember your first play of a game. Maybe this has something to do with the length of time spent on such a game? It is an RPG after all. I just have very small and specific memories. Using the item duplication glitch to buy myself a Porygon, for example. Or the time I had gotten to Mewtwo only to find that my PC boxes were full. I think after I finished it for the first time, I kept loading it up every day for a year to see if the SS Anne would ever return to let me catch the fabled Mew under the truck. Thank you to whoever told me that one. But what I do remember were the many long days spent playing the game after having access to the internet. I know that once we had a PC and a connection to the internet, I was able to look up all the real cheats and glitches. And this was the start of a fascination with glitches that has stayed with me forever. What was once a structured and difficult game became my open playground to do whatever I wanted, and what I wanted was to catch all 151 Pokemon. So I did just that. I learnt how to catch a level 7 Mew at Nugget Bridge using a glitch where you teleport away from a trainer before they spot you. You go and battle somebody, teleport again and encounter a Pokemon based on the special stat of the last Pokemon you fought. I did this for every single trainer in the game that I possibly could. I can't tell you how long it took me, but I know I did it 3 times. Once when I was a kid, then twice when I was a young adult on a copy of Red and Blue. The Gen 1 games are fascinating to me, and I feel very conflicted calling these my favourite Pokemon games when there are much more polished games in the series. How can it be that a game can be both high quality and completely broken, but not to the point where it completely ruins the game for the player? I have had some time to think about other generations of Pokemon, their pros and cons in comparison to Gen 1, and at the risk of being called a Gen 1er, I think that I can explain why I think Gen 1 is still the best overall. There are 2 other Pokemon games I think highly of, and for their own reasons. Gold, Silver and Crystal are more polished, magical games that I played when I was a young adult. I loved their improved graphics, and the music was just as good as Red and Blue's. However, I feel like Gen 2 are smaller games by comparison. It feels like the world is smaller, routes to other towns feel tiny, and while you may be able to go back to Kanto after the main adventure, I do remember being very disappointed by what I found there, and most of the new Pokemon just didn't feel good, no matter how cool their designs were, and the story didn't feel as high stakes. The other games I have high regard for are the Gen 5 games, Black and White. I thought at the time that they had the best story, as it was more involved this time round, with animated cutscenes too. It was also the first time I had no knowledge of the Pokédex going in, with 151 brand new Pokemon. Gen 5 truly took me back to the mystery and discovery of Gen 1. However, it was also the start of Pokemon becoming easier. This is the game where they started putting more healing NPCs along the routes you'd be travelling. The very linear routes. And yes, Pokemon is one of those series that technically keeps getting better. Special split, Dark and Steel, abilities, special and physical attack splits, weather, time, the fairy type, mega evolution, regional forms, these are all things that make the core loop of catching, raising and battling new Pokemon more fun and strategic. Battling Pokemon and testing my knowledge is definitely the biggest draw of this series for me, and the later games certainly make that side of it more accessible. It is easier than ever to raise a strong battle team, and catching Pokemon is also easier than ever. However, I no longer feel compelled to in these 3D games because the main adventures feel mindlessly linear, lack challenge and have uncompelling stories. No Pokemon game story has gripped me quite like Gen 1's. We've gotten some splashes of darkness here and there since, but really, Gen 1 is kind of a miracle. I don't think we'll ever get a kids game quite this dark ever again from the series. And it's not just Lavender Town and the Pokemon Tower I'm talking about either, it's all the implied stuff too. Mr. Fuji and Blaine's involvement in the creation of Mewtwo, and what happened in the Pokemon Mansion, Agatha and Oak's relationship, being able to gamble in the game corner, taking on a criminal organisation and being tempted by evil, the fact that your best friend was kind of a dick. Sending a 12-year-old on such a coming-of-age story felt very real when I was the same age, a time of my life where I was expected to make my own choices and do things on my own. Gen 1 feels so much more like it wants you to grow as a person by the end of it all. I really can't connect with any other game in the series in the same way as this one. Maybe everyone feels this way about their first Pokemon though. I'm curious to hear. There truly was something special about finding out that the 8th gym leader was Giovanni, and upon beating him, he decides to change his ways because you reminded him of the thrill of bonding with and battling Pokemon. The music too, I feel is pure bliss, magic. I don't know how they managed to make such amazing music with the Game Boy's limitations, but they genuinely feel like timeless, classical melodies. It's hard not to get emotional when listening to this OST, and again, it's harder for me to vibe with later Pokemon music. I also feel that Gen 1 was the closest we got to an open world Pokemon game before Scarlet and Violet. Without glitches, if you speed through the game until you get surf, the world becomes fully open for you. I just love surfing to various places early. I usually find myself disappointed backtracking with it in later games. And with glitches, the game becomes your open playground to do whatever you wish. Just try not to corrupt your save file. I recently enjoyed watching a YouTuber called Imported Cheese do a whole video series on Pokemon Green, the original Japanese version, which is even more broken than the game we got, and as well as being very funny and entertaining, some of the tricks shown off took me back to my childhood. That fascination with glitches has lived on in me, as I'd always be looking for bugs and glitches in any future games I played. Now that I am a game developer, I am having all new fun discovering glitches and exploits in my own project. Some of them even become features. And while Gen 1 isn't the most challenging game in the series, I feel like Gen 3 might have been the game where I really had to grind out my levels before the Elite Four. It certainly has its moments and quirks that make it hard without glitches and exploits. Quirks that are available for you to exploit though. Gen 1 still feels like a complete package for what I want out of a Pokemon game. If I was a fan of the Game Boy Advance's music, I might be saying this about Fire Red or Leaf Green, but the original compositions have a lot of charm which gets lost in the hardware transition for me. I have always been underwhelmed by Gen 3. And while I would unfortunately state that Let's Go Eevee or Pikachu are still the highest quality traditional Pokemon games on the Switch, they cut way too many modern features for me to consider that a definitive remake either. Plus, that game is a remake of Yellow. I never liked Yellow. I didn't like the anime anymore when I played it, and I was rather disappointed by its additions. A Crystal or Platinum, Yellow ain't. So with all that in mind, and considering it is the Pokemon game I have replayed the most in my life, I hope to have explained why Red or Blue is not just my favourite Pokemon game, but my third favourite game of all time. Number 2. Have you ever played a Metroidvania? I think if I asked this question back when I first played one, the answer would likely be a no. But thanks to the indie scene, this genre has made itself known to a wider gaming audience thanks to games like Cave Story, Axiom Verge and Hollow Knight, to name a few. Other gaming news outlets are even trying to rename the genre to Search Action. But this attempt to rename the genre is not something I agree with. To ignore the Metroid in Metroidvania feels like a huge dishonour to the game series that started it all. For I am a Metroid fan. I hold this series in a very high regard. I think there is value to be had in every single game in the series. This series consistently delivers high quality gameplay and music. I have never been truly disappointed by a Metroid game. I even see the good in other M and Prime Federation Force. I think that every Metroid game is at least a 7 out of 10, but which is my favourite? As per the rules, I can only choose one game from a series for this list, but I do think highly of many a Metroid game, so let's backtrack a little to find out. I can tell you that my entry into the series was Metroid Prime Hunters on the Nintendo DS. After school, I would go to my best friend's house and play Time Splitters 2 on his Xbox, so I was looking for a multiplayer first-person shooter for our Nintendo DSs. I was scouting the shops when I saw the box for Metroid Prime Hunters. It had this awesome holographic shine to the box art, and the cool designs of each character drew me in. I was surprised this was a Nintendo series. Taking it home, I was amazed by the graphics and gameplay, and so was my friend, as we played over and over this game's in-depth and fun multiplayer modes. These modes could be played online with voice chat too, so I had a lot to enjoy with this game. Its single player mode was cool too, but even back then I noticed the copy and pasted layouts of some rooms, seeing the multiplayer maps slapped in places, and the reskinned bosses. However, I forgave this knowing it was a hardware limitation. This game was still impressive and left an impact on me. All of the hunter encounters were cool, as were the few proper cutscenes. The game had an amazing atmosphere with eerie visuals and captivating music, and I enjoyed the thrill of quickly backtracking through the maps as a countdown timer ticks, all 8 of them. so I just had to go and find out what other Metroid games were available, and I was in luck because I also had a Nintendo GameCube. I bought Metroid Prime 1 and 2 right away. However, I couldn't play them. My mother saw that they were shooting games and I was not allowed to play them. I was raised by a strict Mormon family. It doesn't matter that they were the bad guys. I got away with Hunters as it was on the privacy of a DS, so the only chance I got to play was when I took my GameCube to my friend's house after school. We tried Prime 2's multiplayer, but it felt lacking. We also tried the intro to Prime, but he never saw the appeal. Agreed that the graphics were great though. So it wasn't until I was living on my own that I got to properly play Metroid Prime. When I was 17 years old, I found myself kicked out of the family home and made homeless, for increasingly becoming more rebellious against my parents and their rules. Luckily, one of my school friends got me set up with the council, who quickly found me a hostel to stay in until an empty slot opened up in supported accommodation. I felt alone and isolated in this place. However, don't feel sorry for me. Parting with my family was the best thing that could have happened to me, and thanks to receiving an income from college and selling a lot of my personal belongings, I managed to get myself a Nintendo GameCube and Game Boy Color to keep me company. I could finally play Metroid Prime 1 past its amazing tutorial, and it was at such a perfect time for me. Being equally alone and isolated on the surface of Talon 4, combined with its incredible visuals, sound effects, music, ecosystems and lore was such an immersive pleasure that I relished in. Adding to this pleasure was discovering things that I first found in Hunters, which is set later in the timeline. Recognizing that some creatures, music and environments I met first in Hunters made Prime feel comfortingly familiar, and that Hunters was a great introduction for providing mini bite-sized chunks of the core Metroid loop. Metroid Prime is incredibly immersive. I have never played a game quite like it. Being behind this visor which moves as you do, bobbing up and down with your cannon with every step you take, protecting you from the hostile environment as raindrops, condensation and the insides of wildlife trickle down the visor, and how with the simple press of a button you can switch visors to scan everything with a marker and learn more about your environment and piece together a narrative. Metroid games require you to solve a map's puzzles by searching for new items which can help you progress, and the visor receives 2 additional modes, each visor offering their own pros and cons depending on the situations you find yourself in. And thanks to the first person view and the attention to detail to make every single room, hallway and open area as unique and as memorable as possible, makes searching every nook and cranny of Talon 4 for items one of the most memorable and rewarding gaming experiences for me. When I first played Metroid Prime, I played with the hints on, so I had the game nudging me in the right direction after some wandering. However, nowadays I play with the hints off, and I still get lost sometimes, despite the fact I replay this game almost yearly. It's not a Metroid game if you don't find yourself getting lost from time to time, but it's a good kind of lost, let me assure you. To be lost in a world as beautiful as Talon 4, with its diegetic soundscape forever embedding itself into my inner being, I can't describe how peaceful it all feels. Perhaps this is the same peace that Chozo felt when they ascended, knowing that the Entrusted One will one day finish what they started and destroy the source of the Great Planet's poison once and for all. The Great Poison being Phazon, which I consider to be a frightening concept, for I do not really consider the pirates to be the villain of this game. Yeah, sure, they're aggressive towards us, and reading their logs I understand why, but I always felt like the radioactive substance which the pirates are so fixated on, Phazon, is the true main villain. Yes, the pirates want to use it, but they're ultimately stupid and will destroy themselves with it before ever getting the chance to be successful with it. They're way in over their heads, and I think that makes sense, as this is what Phazon does to life. We learn that Phazon is like a parasite, spreading and multiplying like a cancer, luring and taking hold of life through corruption. It drives the pirates mad, insane. They lust for power and do not care about the repercussions. It's like they've already lost control. The pirates who do not let Phazon have an influence note and fear Phazon madness and are aware of its effects on a subject's lifespan. Yet the Phazon's influence does not care. It only wishes to consume, and Phazon always seems to win in the end. It turns some of the creatures on Talon 4 into some truly amazing boss fights. Having to lock onto my target and strafe, dodge, and fire at the right moments with the correct weapon makes the combat of Prime feel like a dance. I swear that 70% of bosses in this series is jumping over shockwaves, but I don't care. It's so fun, and the weighted movement only adds to the immersion for me. The controls on the GameCube original are easy to get used to, and luckily I had no expectations at the time of using a C-stick for camera movement. Whenever I see my kick-ass and cool character model, I expect that this heavy metal armor would make one move in this way. But with the press of a button, you can speed that up and become a ball with a third-person view. Using this to squeeze through tight areas, the camera transition for it is incredibly smooth and satisfying. And when you know where you are going, boost balling across the map to speed up the backtracking is fun too. You'll want to find ways to speed up the backtracking, as the first game's pacing can be negatively impacted by the map design and how far it asks you to trek sometimes. The biggest one I hear complained about a lot is the way the game trolls you into thinking it's time to explore the sunken frigate after getting the ice beam, only to block your progression and tell you to go all the way back to Fendrana to get the gravity suit. This was so memorable for me. The music and the atmosphere of the sunken frigate alone, I will never forget encountering for the first time. I think these moments are so well designed to make themselves so memorable, so that for your second playthrough, you will not make the same mistake again. I think that was the intent. The excitement of discovering a new area in a Metroid Prime game is something so special, and is the kind of game design I find the most enjoyment in. I always go for 100% items and try to go for 100% scans, the latter of which can still trip me up. This game makes it so worth it if you do that too, as going for 100% logbook scans unlocks galleries featuring lots of cool concept art, and going for 100% items unlocks a secret ending which foreshadows the next game. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes is a sequel that I didn't really like at first. I found it to be too punishing on the GameCube. However, I did go in on hard mode straight away. However, as the years have gone by and I have played the version with motion controls in the Metroid Prime trilogy on Wii, I have been convinced by other Metroid-loving YouTubers that this is the better game, and I have come to consider Echoes my favourite in the trilogy. For I actually do like a challenge, and Prime 2 offers it in spades. I feel like this game is one big boss gauntlet, and I love it for that. The motion controls of the Wii fix some of the most annoying boss fights from the GameCube original, such as the Spider Ball Guardian. I think its world is the most grounded and believable world yet, and I feel its map design is far superior with its pyramid and triangular connectivity to the main temple grounds. Adding to this game's unique world design is the Dark World. We get to visit it on our journey and learn that even the air is hazardous to us. Get used to standing in these light beacons for extended periods and just waiting, soaking up the dreadful and intense atmosphere of dark ether. Prime 2 is the scariest game in the Metroid series. When I do playthroughs of this game, I start to have nightmares about being in the Dark World. The fact that I have to wait and regain my health only makes this world more believable. And the Ing are a unique enemy type who bring a lot to the table thanks to their ability to shapeshift and merge with other creatures. I will never forget witnessing the corpses of Federation soldiers being possessed and reanimated by the Ing, and quickly learned to expect it to happen to any future enemies as well. I think 2 has the most creative and memorable boss fights in the series. If you haven't played it yourself, I won't spoil it too much, but I'll just mention the likes of Boost Ball Guardian, Chica, and Quadraxis for those who know. This game's multi-stage final boss and escape sequence too with the Emperor Ing and Dark Samus, what a finale. And Dark Samus herself, what an incredible villain. She is a dark reflection of Samus's power. We learn that she contains Samus's DNA and is a being made from both a Metroid and Phazon. She is Metroid Prime itself, reborn thanks to ripping Samus's Phazon suit off at the end of their last battle. This is amazing continuity and adds to my appreciation of this trilogy's story. There is so much more lore to unpack, and the stakes are greater this time too. We cannot leave this place with the world split in two, and the fate of an entire civilization rests in our hands. Some fans prefer a Metroid game where you are alone, but I on the other hand love these more interactive games. Something about Umos and being able to talk to him, do his bidding while he protects his brethren and finds a way to assist us, makes me feel more like a hero, rather than feeling like a mindless killer and bounty hunter. I can connect more to this version of Samus. I love the way she just waves and leaves when the mission is complete. It may have some missed potential with the Dark World puzzles and some confusing progression here and there, but the unique things that Prime 2 has to offer far outshine those to make it an unforgettable experience. Then there is Prime 3, A fitting end of the trilogy, which again does its best to be different from the first two games. This one might be my least favourite in the trilogy due to its world design being split up by way too many loading screens, and being a little too linear feeling for my liking. I do, however, love its controls, which feel like the most comfortable, immersive and best first-person controls I have ever used. I think it has a very well-told story, with plenty of lore to read and lots of very cinematic and action-packed moments, and a fun cast of characters, all of whom have full voice acting. This is the first game I played where I thought all of the English voice acting was very well done. I hope that if Prime 4 has other speaking characters, we get another high-quality voiceover cast and script like this, and not like the one we got for Metroid Other M. Corruption is certainly the most cinematic and interactive game in the series. The stakes are also higher than they have ever been, as the entire universe is at threat. We must stop the revived Dark Samus, who is hell-bent on spreading Phazon's influence across multiple worlds. She has found the source of the Phazon meteors that struck both Talon 4 and Aether, a living planet called Phase, which reproduces by firing seeds at other planets, seeds which consume and corrupt until the planet becomes another copy of Phase. Prime 3 has us destroy multiple Phazon seeds which have been sent to other worlds, and along the way we must fight guardians and bosses whom have also been consumed by Phazon and become puppets for Dark Samus. What an epic game. It still delivers the fear and creepy moments that I find so memorable, and despite its linearity, it still offers the wonder and surprise of finding a secret area. However, I feel this is the easiest Prime game, the most linear, and at times feels like a standard first-person shooter than an actual Metroid game, and the way the world is broken up also detracts from the Metroid feeling just slightly so that it's my least favourite. Only really replay it if I am doing the whole trilogy. So what about 2D Metroid? I am a fan, though I played those after Prime, and they don't give me that immersive and believable world that I love Prime games for. I feel like Super is too janky, Zero Mission is too short and easy. The 8-bit games I find too difficult to replay today when the remakes are so much better. For the longest time, Fusion was my favourite, with its focus on horror and tension and its tough boss fights. But then Metroid Dread came along with its own amazing boss fights, perfect movement and controls, and sequence-breakable world design to become my favourite 2D Metroid. But I feel like 2D Metroid and Metroid Prime are two very different experiences. I cannot get immersed in a 2D Metroid in the same way that a Prime game does. And the fact that Dread is my favourite 2D Metroid just goes to show that I think music is one of the things that makes a Prime game too. Super has a good soundtrack, but I'm not the biggest fan of the way the SNES did music. Same goes for the Game Boy Advance, though Fusion does have some standout tracks. Dread has no hummable tunes to speak of at all. The way the Prime games do diegetic music with high quality synth to produce a natural soundscape is unparalleled in all of gaming. So aren't I lucky that the entire Prime trilogy came on a single disc with so many extras and bonuses? The original two games in widescreen with the superior Wii controls, the Fusion suit in Prime easily accessible, a book containing concept art and lore details. This way I get to say that the Metroid Prime trilogy itself is my second favourite game of all time. Now I can tick off 2 more YouTuber top 10 cliches. It's my top 10 list. I'm putting 3 games in 1 slot. And how often does this happen anyway? An entire trilogy collection part where every game is of the highest quality, all on a single disc without requiring you to download the other games? They even re-released this on the Wii U eShop for only 20 quid back when it was still up. I hope that everybody with a Wii U picked up this amazing deal. So yes, I love the entire Metroid Prime trilogy, with Echoes being my overall favourite. Thanks to all 3 being packaged together, I can affirm that it is my favourite trilogy to replay in all of gaming. For now, I can only wonder where Prime 4 is going to take us. Roll on 2030. Honourable mentions. Before I reveal my number 1, I would like to reveal the list I wrote before this script so far. I came up with 22 games. These are the games that were instantly ruled out for one reason or another. Wii Sports is another perfect game that anyone can pick up and understand, but it's just a casual party game. I only enjoy playing bowling on it really. Elite Dangerous is an incredibly immersive and deep sandbox space sim where you can forge your own journey and play online with others, but I think it's too grindy and difficult for new players to get into. and the game is over 10 years old now, it's starting to die. Creatures 2 is a life sim I played on PC back in the late 90s. It had amazing online communities that shared user-made content, however, I nearly forgot it existed and I never fully understood the game. Alien Isolation is a surprisingly good licensed tie-in and a high-quality horror game deserving of its many Game of the Year awards. However, I find this game to be too scary and difficult and long to replay regularly. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is my favourite 3D Mario game. However, the more I replay 3D Marios, the less I feel the magic and impact from the very first time. Tomb Raider 2013 is an amazing AAA action adventure, though replaying now I can't take the story seriously anymore. And Splatoon 3 is the best Splatoon game yet, a series so unique and special that I cherish it very much. But even 3 has problems I wish were changed, and I can't be bothered to do yet another single player campaign. With these 7 games ruled out, I was technically left with the top 15, so as per YouTube top 10 tradition, allow me to quickly cover my honourable mentions. At number 15, I have placed Dungeon Keeper 2, a PC god sim by Bullfrog in 1999 and published by EA. This game has you building and managing dungeons, attracting dark creatures who all have their own special roles to fulfill. It comes with a fun single player campaign which teaches you how to play the game with each mission and sees you eventually becoming master of the underworld to prepare for the fight for the overworld. Defeating many a noble hero and claiming many a portal crystal, being evil has never felt so good. Adding to this game's charm is the voice of the narrator. The way he delivers his lines with such snark I have always found amusing. I would spend many hours just playing the game's sandbox mode, my pet dungeon, and building the biggest and most expansive dungeons I could, converting many heroes into my own minions and having an army of hundreds of skeletons. For many years I wondered where the promised sequel, Dungeon Keeper 3, had gone, as its trailer was included in the extras for Dungeon Keeper 2. Later, I realised that EA had done to Bullfrog what it tends to do to so many studios it absorbs. They got shut down. Now Dungeon Keeper is a lame microtransaction-filled mobile game. However, I discovered that a spiritual successor had been crowdfunded and released on Steam. War for the Overworld originally started as a fan sequel to Dungeon Keeper. However, over time, it became its own entity. At first I was thrown off by how different everything was, but after I acclimatised to it, I think this is a brilliant love letter to a game I spent so much time playing as a kid. They even brought back the original voice actor to insult me. Pick it up if you enjoy a good god sim. At number 14 is my favourite racing game. Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed is my ideal multiplayer racer. I'm thankful that it was a launch game for my Wii U, and I have many happy memories playing this both online and locally, using the gamepad screen and TV screen separately. I feel like this game is a lot more balanced than a game like Mario Kart, allowing the player to dodge oncoming projectiles with a well-timed boost. I love the way the tracks and vehicles dynamically transform to make for some amazing set pieces within a track. All of the Sega references are fantastic, as well as the soundtrack by Richard Jacques, and including Wreck-It Ralph, the main character from one of my favourite animated movies, was the icing on the cake. The only thing that lets it down for me is the inability to make a random cup for local multiplayer. Otherwise, the Sega kid in me will always choose this over Mario Kart. At number 13 is my very first DS game, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. I think this was also the first visual novel I ever played, and I was so heavily engrossed and invested in these characters. I love all the twists and turns this series takes us on, and I'll never forget all of the memorable and zany characters we meet along the way. I never got to play the sequels until they made their way to WiiWare, but the same words apply to those two. The way everything comes full circle to the DL6 incident by the end. These stories are feel-good, heartwarming, yet tragic, depressing and bittersweet all at once. I haven't played past the original trilogy because at the time, I felt heartbroken for the characters, especially Maya. I couldn't play much of Apollo justice because I saw that Phoenix was washed up and no longer a lawyer. I couldn't accept it. I did enjoy the crossover game, Professor Layton vs Phoenix Wright, despite having never played a Layton game before. I remember being on the edge of my seat for the whole plot, and happy to see Maya and Phoenix working together again, but I do remember being disappointed by the explanation for the scenario by the end of it. There's so much to unpack with this series, but I'll cut this segment short. The presentation, music, art style and characters of the series left an impression on me. Maybe it's the reason that I love anime so much. These games were like a gateway to it, and I've seen the anime adaptation too. I recommend it. It's very faithful and fun. At number 12 is my favourite indie game, Axiom Verge. I think it was the first indie game I ever played, and I got it on my Wii U because it was being hyped as a genius return to the Metroidvania genre. The H.R. Geiger inspired art style drew me in, but once I found out how the player progresses through this game's world, I had to play it. Collecting powers that allow you to glitch yourself, the world or the enemies, is a genius concept that I have never seen done in a game before. Wall blocking your way? Let's come back later when we can no-clip through it instead. Dead end? Nothing but a tree with bubbles? Come back with the Axiom Disruptor and turn those bubbles into platforms. Axiom Verge is full of clever moments like this that subverted my expectations on how a game should progress. I couldn't wait to see what the next power-up would be. I was even caught off guard when an enemy I glitched late game turned into a missing note. Amazing reference. The plot equally subverted my expectations, and it had me reading lore in depth to find meaning, and exploring what others have theorized online has made this one of the most engrossing video game stories I have ever thought about. The game is a peak example of Metroidvania design, nails the atmosphere too with gory and living sprite work and a soundtrack to match each area's vibe. Though I must admit its boss fights aren't exactly mechanically deep. If you like Metroidvanias, play this game. Its sequel is great too. I'd argue it has a better soundtrack, and its world is more fun to explore, and its plot cleverly makes it both a prequel and a sequel to the first game. Its boss fights are somehow weaker than the first games though. Just missing out on number 10 is my most played Wii U game, Super Mario Maker. I was incredibly hyped for this game's release as I saw the genius use of the gamepad combined with a fun and easy to use level editor. I loved playing games with level editors, and I spent some time when I was a kid making level designs using ROM hacking tools for Sonic 1 and 2, and I do enjoy playing Mario games. I think it's brilliant that Super Mario Maker quietly teaches you how to become a good level editor. For you cannot upload a level to be shared online unless you can complete it yourself. Having the ability to go from edit mode to play mode in the snap of a button makes this such a fun tool to use to test what feels good and what doesn't. Being able to experience randomly selected user-generated levels not only provides potentially endless Mario, but I also quickly developed a sense of what was fun level design and what was mindless. It felt like every day I'd play a new level that would inspire a one of my own. I remember just coming home from work every night to mess around on Mario Maker. I went on to upload about 54 levels on my original account, but I think they're all lost to time now. Super Mario Maker might just be the Wii U's actual killer app. It's a shame it never got slopes, otherwise it would have been perfect. I also own Super Mario Maker 2, but the magic of the Wii U game was lost without the second screen. I never played much of it, and I was disappointed that my beloved Game Boy Mario Land games got little to no representation. Now, it's no secret that I love Sonic the Hedgehog, but you're all probably wondering, what is my favourite Sonic game of all time? I could only pick one for this list, so it really was a no-brainer. What the hell is that? Hold up, wait a second. Haven't I already said this? Let's take a look. Go back. Oh, wait. Stop. Now, it's no secret that I love Sonic the Hedgehog. Yeah, but you're all I already said this. What is my favourite Sonic game of all time? Wait, did you see that? Stop, pause. You're all probably wondering, what is my favourite? There it is. Sonic game of all time. Allow me to explain. Like with 2D Metroid vs Metroid Prime, I also feel like 3D Sonic and 2D Sonic are two very different gameplay experiences. 3D Sonic likes to get experimental, mixing and mashing with other genres. They use voice-acted cutscenes to tell their stories, and the better ones tend to lean into anime tropes to give us epic and grand stakes. 2D Sonic, on the other hand, likes to keep things pure and simple. I had to give a shout out to my favourite 3D Sonic. Like I said, it reinvigorated my interest in the series at a time when I had become a Nintendo gamer. But I am breaking the rules because you have to understand that Sonic has been with me virtually my whole life. I consider it fate. Being born into a family that had a Sega Master System, I consider 2D Sonic to be the cream of the crop when it comes to the genre of 2D platformer. The 8-bit games are amongst my earliest of memories. I remember that suddenly my dad brought home a Sega Saturn with a bunch of games, and among those games was Sonic Jam. I got to play through the entire series, albeit via the game's easy mode, so the adventure was cut short and abridged. I can't remember Jam very well. As soon as it came into our household, it suddenly disappeared, and all I had to game on was an SNES and a Game Boy. Oh yeah, and a PC. Even during my Nintendo years, Sonic still somehow managed to stay in the back of my mind. I felt incredibly lucky to have a PC back in the late 90s and through the 2000s. My dad liked to play first-person shooters on it, but I, on the other hand, picked up these Exploder discs. Sonic 3D, Flicky's Island, and Sonic R were released on PC this way, and I have many happy memories playing these to death when I could. I could even slot these discs into my CD Walkman to listen to their incredible soundtracks whenever I wanted. But these games are simply spin-offs, and certainly not pure and traditional 2D platformers deserving of a number 1 placement. So what Sonic game am I going to put at number 1? Well, it's a Sonic game famous for its huge and numerous levels, a Sonic game famous for its 2 different soundtracks, a Sonic game that was released on the medium of CD. That's right, I'm talking about the Sonic & Knuckles collection. This is genuinely how I first got to play the full fat experience of what would become my favourite game of all time, Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Of course, I did get to experience the originals once I got back into the series thanks to SA2, but for the longest time, the Sonic & Knuckles collection on PC was my most accessible version of the game to play. Now, what can I say that hasn't already been said by people whom I consider to be much more talented at making videos on this platform than myself? Not much, I reckon. But I love how this game picks up where the last adventure left off. It has the most expansive and varied level design in the entire series. Angel Island feels so believable thanks to the way each level connects and transitions to the next, making for a journey that appears seamless. It has the most zones of any game, each one being bigger than the last. I know that some Sonic fans prefer short and sweet levels, but I have a huge appetite for the things that I love, so I appreciate how long the levels can get. I love both Marble Garden and Sandopolis Zone for this. Think these levels are too long? Get good. Or as Sonic would say, you're too slow! It has the best soundtrack of the series, each composition bringing a unique flavour to the table, lovingly prepared by each chef to decorate the world that Sonic speeds through. I'm specifically referring to the original 16-bit soundtrack here, Michael Jackson and Brad Buxer and all. The PC version soundtrack was awfully delivered via MIDI, and these tracks have become infamous within the fandom. I will admit though, I have a lot of nostalgia for Launch Base Act 2's alternate track. It has a bittersweet symphony that I find very fitting, especially for the Knuckles version of this stage. It also offers the most replay value of any game of the series, not only with its 12 zones to explore, but by also giving us the chance to replay the game as Tails, with his own routes accessible via flying, something he couldn't do in Sonic 2 at the time, and Knuckles, whose campaign is set after Sonic's and offers some unique level designs that can't be found on any other playthrough. And I think it not only has the best story of the series, but flaunts the best execution of a story delivered without dialogue of any game that I've ever played. You see, I am autistic. I've always had problems with verbal communication and understanding what others are trying to tell me, so I appreciate any form of art that can tell a story without any dialogue at all. Sonic 3 and Knuckles manages to tell a story with so much heart, grand adventure and meaning, using in-game cutscenes that quite often last no longer than a few seconds. A story that explores themes of trust, friendship, betrayal, destiny, manipulation, good versus evil, mystery, and the end of the world. And adding to this game's story is the introduction of Knuckles the Echidna, who, besides Sonic himself, is my favourite character in the series. When I was a kid, I read about him in Sonic Jam's manual, and related to him a lot because it said that he was shy with girls. But as I got to know Knuckles through this game, I found myself relating to him more and more. He was lonely, but had a lot of responsibilities. He knew his home like the back of his hand. He was a smart and cunning trickster, but because he didn't interact with others often, he was vulnerable to be taken advantage of by those with nefarious goals. The poor, gullible lost soul. but he knew the difference between right and wrong and did the right thing in the end. I love the journey Knuckles goes on in this game alone. It's for these reasons I consider Sonic 3 and Knuckles to be the best 2D Sonic game of all time. But why is a 2-hour-long blast from the past my number 1 favourite game of all time? How is it that I can not only put one game about a cartoon hedgehog at the top of the list, but also have the confidence to break the rules and put 2 of them in one list? Well, it's because of you. Yes, you. I presume you were watching this because you like watching YouTube videos on your favourite subjects, and as a Sonic the Hedgehog fan, I feel pretty spoilt for content. You see, you may have picked up on various themes throughout this video, themes of isolation, loneliness, survival, yet also themes of freedom and adventure. The online Sonic fanbase has been with me through the good and the bad, from the days of exploring Hidden Palace on the Sonic Stadium websites, to the last decade of being a YouTube viewer. Thanks to you guys, I have not felt so alone, and I have had the pleasure of having many of you with me in my rooms. I just want to thank you all for your creativity and passion. If it wasn't for the Sonic fanbase, I would not have become the person I am today. Thank you for giving my life meaning and purpose. From the content creators to the ROM hackers, from the fan game developers to the musicians and remixers, from the speedrunners to the long play uploaders, from the website admins to the teachers who use Sonic to spread knowledge. I love you all, and I hope you continue to inspire myself and the other Sonic fans who also want to make a contribution to the community, big or small. I am so proud to be a member of the Sonic the Hedgehog community. You have unleashed my confidence and given me the ability to fly in the freedom. Thank you for opening your hearts and allowing me to believe in myself. Thank you for watching this video and taking the time to get to know me better. Thank you for making it this far in the video. I would like to give special thanks to my Discord community who have helped me with this project along the way. Whether it's reading my scripts or egging me on to continue the project, I'd like to thank you all. And I'm going to announce that this Discord community is now available for you to enter, but at a catch. I have launched a Patreon. I know I'm a small channel, but my friend Jay encouraged me to do it. Anyway, some of you may know me as the developer of another Sonic 2 remake. Some of you may know me as YouTube Pooper. Some of you may know me from the very start, launching this channel, discussing video games, before I went off the rails completely. Making this video was very rewarding for me. It was a very spiritual journey. It was very therapeutic for me, and I enjoyed it a lot. If you would like to see more content like this, do consider subscribing to my Patreon. Whether you like the YouTube poops, which are definitely going to continue, whether you like any of the experimental stuff I do, or if you like the streams that I do. I stream 3 times a week, by the way. Some of you may know me as a streamer. Yeah, if you would like to support the channel with that kind of content, I do consider subscribing to Patreon. In return, you will get at the very least access to the Discord community, where you can hang out with my friends and collaborators. And I want to do weekly gaming hangouts as well. I think that is very fun to do with the community. I would like to build a community. Like that's the dream.